have a bunch of things I want to say about TJ Watt. They're all related to that, but they're kind of disjointed at the same time. And none of them comes close to the very first thing I'm going to say, which is, man, here's hoping for the very best of health in football and in life for just a spectacular football player and equally respected human. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. It's presented by FanDuel. And if you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. What we know, and I mean know, coming right from Bert Loughton, the Steelers' chief spokesman, is the following. And this was issued at 12:30 p.m. yesterday. TJ Watt is currently in a local hospital for further medical evaluation of his lung after experiencing discomfort at the practice facility on Wednesday. He will not be at practice on Thursday, and his status for Monday night's game versus Miami is in question. Coach Tomlin will provide more updates at the appropriate time. Tomlin did speak with reporters a little bit later after that practice, didn't have anything new, really didn't elaborate on anything other than to emphasize how little he actually knew, and that he'd spoken with TJ the previous night, and that TJ was comfortable, and that he didn't know and nobody knew anything about his game readiness. Okay, that's what we know. What we believe is that TJ is still in the hospital, which, without playing pretend doctor, would strongly suggest he's not about to bounce back up and be ready to play football on Monday night. We're talking about a human lung here. If they think enough of the situation to monitor him in hospital for a third straight day, yeah, I'll get to the football in a little bit. As far as what might have happened, the key term within that is might have, until there's firmer information and you see whether or not there are accusations or legal actions or anything like that. I like the word that Tomlin used, caution. The gist of what Tomlin had to say.
I'm a little bit cautious about what I say because I'm not a medical expert. But to make a long story short, he was experiencing some discomfort when he was at the facility yesterday. And so we took him to the docs, and, they're going through some procedures. He stayed overnight in the hospital. He has a lung situation that's being addressed. I think he has some testing and so forth ahead of him this afternoon, and that's all I know at this juncture. He and I communicated last night. He was comfortable, and that's all I have really at this point.
Okay, once more, that's everything that there is from the team. The statement from Loughton, that session with Tomlin. There is an ESPN report that Watt was hurt at the facility during treatment. I don't know if that's the case. I do know that Watt was at the facility for treatment. At least I think I know that, because the only reason you'd be at the facility for what the Steelers were dubbing Victory Wednesday, when there's no practice, no media obligations, no nothing, would be to receive some sort of treatment. Tomlin did acknowledge that there was no intention of having any injury attached to Watt's status entering the week of practice, nor anything that he'd been informed about following the game Sunday in Baltimore. So what he would have been receiving treatment on, don't know. You did hear Tomlin make a reference to TJ having been in the cafeteria. Now, he didn't elaborate on what that meant, but I can tell you with some conviction that players don't receive treatment in the cafeteria. And if something happened in the cafeteria, it would have been, in all likelihood, a delayed reaction to something else that had happened earlier. And I say this because the ESPN report that he was hurt during treatment could easily have been ESPN misinterpreting from somebody that he was in the building for treatment when this thing happened. That makes sense? Okay, stick with me here. There are any number of things this could have been, according to multiple medical experts who piped up in various public forums over the past 24 hours. This notion that he was getting shot up, meaning painkillers or whatever, that alone doesn't make any sense. There isn't a player in the NFL who gets shot up on the Thursday before a Monday night game. Believe it or not, they've yet to invent the drug that lasts that long for pain-killing purposes. The most common version of this that I see, at least in conversation on social, has been, well, the Steelers medical person was trying to shoot him up and they missed and they punctured his lung. So they punctured his lung, which he would definitely feel and would have an immediate impact, but he was in the cafeteria. Now, I'm going to bring up, and you can accuse me of whatever you want here, being reckless, irresponsible, whatever, but it's not reporting. It's really not even speculation. I'm going to bring up in isolation, really, the scenario that it could be a blood clot. And the reason that I do that is that across the river, just a couple of weeks ago, Philip Hollander of the Penguins was shut down with a blood clot, and everything about this scenario jibes with that one. There was an injury. Nothing really resulted from it. A good bit later, he tried to take the ice for a practice, couldn't go, left the rink, was diagnosed with the clot, and was shut down for a minimum of 3 months. That's how long that takes, because you can't compete as an athlete while you're taking blood thinners. And that's how long the blood thinners are prescribed to be taken. Now, do I know this? No. Do I have information to support this? Also no. Why am I bringing it up? It's to present to you an alternate scenario to what seems to be the most common one up there, and to reinforce my main point here, which is that we don't know. Now, at the risk of being insensitive, from purely the football perspective, the Steelers are deeper at the edge rusher position than they are at any other. So as much as it would be wonderful to have a perennial DPOY candidate, first ballot Hall of Famer, and everything else that TJ represents out on the field for that monstrous game on Monday, this defense remains in good hands with Alex Highsmith, who might be coming off his best game ever in the NFL, with Nick Herbig, who'd be a starting edge rusher for exactly 31 other NFL teams, and even with Jack Sawyer, who's been treated as a responsible adult, as a rookie rather than just being stored on special teams. But here's hoping TJ's back and playing football sooner rather than later, and for all the right reasons. When we come back, J1Q. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Football season's finally here. Time to check out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Think the Steelers are headed to the Super Bowl? Lock in your bets today. Whatever your game, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials, so you can join in on all the action. Time for J1Q. In lieu of just using one question, there's a lot of reaction to yesterday's episode that began with a somewhat deceiving comparison between Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell, and ended up instead serving as a reminder that it doesn't matter who's running behind this offensive line because they're not getting the holes that they need. And I'd love to get into some of that, meaning some of what you had to say about it. It was good stuff, lots of good stuff. First of them comes from Justin Watson, who says, on all due respect, DK and everybody who keeps pointing at the offensive line, this is a narrative that needs to go away ASAP. Steelers see the highest rate of heavy boxes of any team in the NFL, and number 2 isn't close, and that's because no defenses feared the 3 perimeter weapons paired with DK Metcalf the most until last week. Totally fair point to bring up. If you're not successful at passing, you're going to face those boxes. That is a part of it. Justin, I have not seen the passing game that solves this. Therefore, I call for more blocking. To which Brian says, I'm sorry, DK, I just don't understand how you're fine with the fact that the Steelers have to use a freakishly good blocking tight end and have Spencer Anderson in for runs, and they still can't accomplish what other teams do with just their front five. Well, here again, Brian, I'm not trying to live in the world that I want. I'm trying to live in the world that exists. And in that world, the only really committed, consistent run blocking comes from Zach Frazier on that line. That's it. Tyler says, remind me again why Caleb Johnson was drafted in the 3rd round. Well, that's obviously got something to do with this too. I'm not doubting the young man's future. I'm certainly not casting anything on him over one silly special teams mistake. But keeping this real, if Johnson had shown up in Latrobe and just floored us all, if Johnson had been anywhere near as exciting or enticing as he seemed to be the day he was drafted, meaning inside the Steelers headquarters, this could be a very different scenario, maybe a very different season. Didn't happen. Chad says there's an old adage, you're allowed to get better, and that begs the question, why isn't the offensive line getting better? Oh, boy, that's obviously not something that you encapsulate in a super quick partial response here. I think the line is better than it was at the start of the season. I think that was a pretty low bar. I don't think it's happening anywhere near as quickly and as consistently as any of us would like. And we'll see how the Steelers end up feeling about Pat Meyer's future after this season, because he's the only actual common denominator. Matt has maybe my favorite response. He just says, how many years has it been now that we've been talking about getting the run game going? Well, yeah. Let's make sure to also factor into this the people who evaluate these linemen, who decide how much of a team's investment goes into that position. Because keeping this real, if you're spending first-round picks on both of your tackles, a second-round pick on your center, fourth-round pick on your right guard, and a whole lot of money on your left guard, and that's to say nothing of the money that they were throwing around on free agents just before that, and those players, just as players, aren't getting it done or aren't getting better, with the exception of Frazier, and in a lot of ways Troy Fautanu, to be fair, then it's not just about instruction. It's also about acquisition and amateur evaluation. But yeah, it's been quite a while there, Matt, and I feel like I can trace that back specifically to Art Rooney's admonition just before Najee Harris was drafted, that the number one offensive priority, actually at the time, the number one priority was to get back to efficient running. Hasn't happened. Has not come close to happening. Appreciate hearing from all of you. As always, appreciate everyone who checks out Daily Shot of Steelers. Don't forget, we will have a double shot of Steelers. That's our live video program. That'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern today on our YouTube channel. And we'll still have all of our regular stuff coming up next Monday, running up to kickoff. Thanks so much for being here.